episode number 173. It is Thursday, March 19th, and this is, of course, Sunday Gold's a Florida State baseball podcast. Ariya Masudi, Brett Nevitt back here and getting you set for a big weekend at Howser, number 10, NC State in Tallahassee, taking on your Noles in what is a marquee ACC series for FSU, second in a row after playing Wake Forest last weekend in Winston-Salem. We'll talk a little bit about the combined no-hitter against the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats as well that happened midweek at Howser. And, I think, Brett, lots to look forward to this weekend. Little Birdie told me that you're making the trip back up to Tallahassee for this one. So Brett Nevitt's in the house. It must be a big series at Dick Howser Stadium. This is going to be a fun one, right? This is why you play baseball at Florida State in the ACC and why you and I are so lucky to get to cover games like this one.
Yeah, another big series for FSU this weekend. Obviously, played really well in the midweek coming off a really big series at Wake, which is good to see them, not have any kind of dip off in effort and energy. Now you have another big one, top 11 series with NC State with a coaching staff that FSU's coaching staff is extremely familiar with, especially Link Jarrett and his son, JT Jarrett on the other staff, but also Elliott Avent and him have a very good relationship, as well as Chris Hart. He's a former FSU player. So a lot of familiarity there between the two programs. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they line up against each other.
Before we get into the matchup and we talk also about Bethune-Cookman and the 12-1 victory for Florida State on Tuesday night, I do want to thank our sponsors, Alumni Hall and Metro Deli. Alumni Hall has been with us for the last couple of years. They've made this thing possible, and they'll give you 15% off your entire order to get all your favorite Seminole gear in-store or online with the code SG15. And they've got hats, jerseys, new gear coming in every week, different brands, and the weather's finally warming up a little bit in Howser. So a lot of cool gear to get out there and support your Noles and support us too. Help our podcast out as well. Let them know we sent you, and we do appreciate that. Metro Deli joining on this season for us. A terrific bite. Thursdays, the cheeseburger wrap is incredible. MetroDeliTally.com. Let them know Sunday Gold sent you to grab a bite. They are awesome, and we appreciate their friendship. I want to thank those of you watching this podcast on YouTube, on X. We appreciate those of you listening on Apple, on Spotify, Google, wherever you get it. Do us a favor, like and subscribe to the podcast, both with the audio medium and visual. You can subscribe to Brett's channel, Brett Nevitt Baseball, on YouTube for more of these and to know when it's coming out each and every episode that we release. But we do appreciate you guys. This thing has continued to grow, over 150,000 all-time listens, and Brett and I are humbled by it. It's been pretty awesome to see. But, yeah, I think, Brett, when you look back at the 12-1 victory against Bethune, the Wildcats were preseason SWAC favorites, and I think Florida State was clearly the favorite in that game coming in. That was not a surprise. But in this topsy-turvy midweek upset special that college baseball has become seemingly this season, and we saw a handful more this week of top 15 and top 25 teams going down to mid-majors. It was really a trap game, right, for Florida State, sandwiched in between a matchup against Winston-Salem, against Wake Forest and Winston-Salem, and the great weekend you had up there, and also the NC State series coming up, right? And so it's easy to let your mind slip just a little bit, to relax, but the Noles did the exact opposite. They grinded out 12 runs. Bailey hit a home run, and the pitching staff threw a combined no-hitter in a run rule victory in 7 innings.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy how it happened. I mean, you get to the 7th inning there with an opportunity to end a mercy rule win after Miles' home run, and it's like, oh, man, you can also have a no-hitter going here, even though 1 run's on the board for Bethune-Cookman. It's no small feat, even though it's 7 innings, and against Bethune-Cookman and a combined no-hitter, it's Link talked about it. It's hard to contain offenses in this day and age of college baseball with the strike zones as small as they are and the bats being as hot as they are, as well as, just the baseballs in general. So, you have to tip your cap to the effort, especially on a midweek when you're kind of piecing it together. And we always talk about it starts and ends with the starter, and it started with Cooper Whitehead going, 3 perfect innings and retiring the first 9 batters he faced. So when you get that on top of a couple of crooked numbers from the offense, it's really easy to put away a team like Bethune-Cookman pretty quickly, because they're not going to go to some of their better pen arms at that point and waste their bullets when they're down 7-0 in the second inning. So they've done a really good job at this point outside of the Florida game, but all these games that they should go and win on the midweeks, they've done that to this point. And they've done it in pretty, remarkable fashion for the most part, outside of having to walk off Jacksonville the second time they played them. And I think also they've done a really good job of like taking advantage of the mercy rule this year. Like when they've had opportunities to do it, it feels like every time that comes up, the offense, scores the runs they need to, and then the pitching staff produces the shutdown inning after that to end the game in 7 innings, which is huge for you in a 50-plus game season to save a couple innings here and there.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, the common theme has been when these mid-majors upset some of these top 25 programs, and I think we saw it this week, right? Southeast Louisiana had a big upset, Tarleton State, and so on and so forth. I think South Alabama beat Alabama as well. And who beat Texas? Was that Texas State or Tarleton?
That was Tarleton who beat Texas.
Yeah. So, I think Oklahoma lost to Southeast Louisiana, and those are capable programs, but the common theme in those are not getting off the fast starts. And Florida State got off to a fast start. You score 3 runs early in the game. I think that kind of sets the tone against a team that's overmatched, rather than getting deep into the ball game, right? 5th, 6th, 7th, and now the belief is in there for some of these programs. JU and more so UNF got off to big starts against you in those games, and that allows them to fuel some of the energy that no doubt they're going to come in with anyway from having the opportunity to play you. And I thought against Mercer, the Noles did a similar nice job of just kind of putting that to bed so quick that the thought of an upset was no longer as a part of the game script. So, fast starts on these weekends, on these midweeks, I should say, are very important. And you get 3 there right out of the gate. Bailey gets you a big double to score some runs. And Brett, you said it. You got to lead with your offense a lot of the time in these midweeks and be able to take advantage of pitching on the other side that has a lack of depth, right, with their staffs. I was not surprised to see 12 runs. I was surprised to see a combined no-hitter. I thought Cooper Whitehead threw really well, man. It's never going to be overwhelming stuff. He's 86 to 88, touches a 9 here and there every now and then. But when that changeup and he's able to get swing and miss and throw it for strikes, he does a really nice job with the difference in the velocity, right, between the fastball and the changeup. And up until the 4th inning, when he kind of lost it a little bit, and he had a couple of really long half innings where he had to sit in the dugout. And the weather was cold on Tuesday in Tallahassee. That was a wind chill in the high 40s. So that was not the most pleasant of pitching circumstances for FSU. But I thought up until that 4th inning, man, that's as good as we've seen Whitehead look. And it's a big deal if he could eat some innings for you on those midweeks.
Yeah, I think when you have an effective changeup that you can use over and over again, you kind of set the speed limit. And at that point, you kind of take away from the velocity of the fastball not being very, very high, obviously in the high 80s most of the time. So, you saw him be effective with that pitch over and over again. And I think he struck out 6. I think he had 5 strikeouts in the first 3, and those were 3 perfect innings. And just kind of lost the command in that 4th inning of work. I think he hit a couple batters and then walked one before they pulled him out of the game. And that's where they scored the 1 run in the no-hitter. But yeah, Whitehead's done a good job in those spot starts that he's gotten to this point. And it's been, that's what you need from a guy like that. You just need him to go out there and eat some innings for you. I think, if Jacob Marlowe hadn't gone down, that's another guy that you feel like would be in this type of role as well and doing something similar. So to have Whitehead step up and fill that role that you felt maybe like Marlowe was going to do this year, and also with Manka being hurt and out right now, to have him step up and give you some quality innings can really help you and be a bonus for you.
Yeah, and there'll be options there on the midweeks, right? You might have some opportunities more for Rhett Vaughn and Manny Lantigua and those guys to get some opportunities and see if they can prove that they'll earn the trust to be used later on in the season when the games start to become more important. It was clear, though, that the plan going into the game on Tuesday was to get some of the guys work who didn't pitch over the weekend at Wake Forest. You pitched so well with the starters that you didn't really need a lot of the bullpen to get through those 3 games. And so you wanted to get guys work. They went to Purcell and Stokes pretty quickly, right, with those opportunities. And I thought both guys pitched pretty well. It wasn't perfect, but obviously when you have a combined no-hitter, you didn't give up any hits. I'm not going to complain with that. I don't think that I can. But good to see Purcell continuing to work his way back to full strength. And Stokes really stood out to me because the fastball velocity they had, he's up to 98 to 100 at Florida, and they worked on some things to get more command of the fastball. So the velocity's down a couple ticks to about a 95, 97, but it seems like they found something for him that allows him to command it just a touch better, which 95, 97, Brett, plenty good enough when you have a slider like that. And if you're able to command those 2 pitches with the slider and a 95, 96 mile an hour fastball, you're going to get a lot of outs with what Stokes can do for you in the back end. So that was really nice to see. And those guys, I thought, overall pitched pretty well in relief of Whited.
Yeah, I think with Purcell, still not exactly as sharp as maybe we'd expect with the command wise. Hitting a batter to allow a run in, and I think he walked the first batter in the 5th inning. But I think outside of that, perfectly fine outing. Stokes, yeah, if he can just get something in the strike zone along with the slider, like just to show something and make hitters think about something else, because to this point, I feel like hitters haven't really had to think about the fastball being in the strike zone. So just being able to get it in the strike zone, even if it's at 95, 97, I think would go a long way in helping him just be able to spin off that slider over and over again as effectively as he wants to and as effective as it can and should be because of how good it is.
Are you on the same page with me on this, that for Florida State, you've got to find someone after Abraham, obviously, that can give you some consistency, but the common names that are coming up right now, these 4 names that I think they really do want to get going. And that to me is, the Purcell, the Stokes, O'Leary's another name, and Meeble. If they can find those 4 guys to factor in late in games and really eat up some outs and give you a shot, they would love that. I didn't include Chris Kinnear's name because I do think Kinnear has carved out a role that seems to have worked. It's working for him, right? The extended 2 or 3 innings on the back end of a 5-inning start, and Kinnear's really good if you have a lead because he attacks the strike zone with multiple off-speed pitches and breaking balls. But the 4 I mentioned, in addition to Abraham, that kind of feels like the core, doesn't it, of 5 that if you were drawing this up ideally would be able to give you some opportunities out of the pen to relieve some of the starting pitching.
Yeah, I think ideally, yeah. I mean, that is what those guys were brought here to do. They were brought here to bolster the bullpen. I mean, Stokes, you expect to be someone that can work in high leverage spots with high octane stuff. Purcell has shown that he can manage high leverage situations from his time at USC, and he was brought here to be a high leverage arm. Like Link has said that they need him to be a guy in high leverage spots for them. And I know Link calls every leverage spot like a leverage spot at this point, but there are specific times where you just need certain guys mentality wise to go in there and get the job done. And Purcell was one of those guys that was, added to do that. And Meeble with the left-handed situation and Makeup being out, and Whited is kind of a reverse split left-hander where the changeup is the primary, secondary. So he's going to do better against right-handed hitters for the most part. So that leaves Meeble as the guy with the 2 other left-handers in the starting rotation is the one with the slider that you need to match up with left-handed hitters. And then with O'Leary, I think O'Leary kind of right now is reminding me of John Abraham the last couple of years. Like we know the stuff is there and we see it in spurts, but then you also see the command go pretty quickly at times and runners get on base at a pretty high rate. I think the whips around 2 right now, and the ERA is much higher than you would want it to be. But when you go and look at the pure stuff, when you go and look at the curveball, and just the full pitch mix for O'Leary, like it's someone that should be very effective for you. You just need to find a way to get it to be more consistent, and the only way for that to happen is for him to get more experience. And it took a while for John too. We're here year 3 now, but it's lights out so far this year. So I think O'Leary has that ceiling as well, but you do need him to throw a lot more strikes than he's thrown to this point. But yes, I think all 4 of those guys, along with Abraham, are meant to be the core of what you're doing in the pen, along with the help of guys like Kinnear.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what they do against NC State this weekend. And, how does that game script go? You can't just rely on your starting pitchers to go 7 innings every time. That's not realistic in the course of a season when you have 10, 11, 12 starts, right? And so, we're intrigued to see how this one plays out this weekend. Last thought on Bethune, and then we'll pivot to the preview of NC State at Howser for the 3-game set. What do you think of the lineup? Obviously, Miles is Miles. He hits that home run as well. I think it was like a 50-degree launch angle that just was popped up into the clouds, and he's special, so that's going to leave the park. And more specifically, what are your thoughts on the way they've maybe ordered the lineup? They have Putnam at 2. Do you like that? Dowd obviously leadoff. They seem to have found something that they like at Dowd consistently at leadoff for them over the last few games. And then, Shmela continues to hit, man. He had another 2 hits against Bethune, and he has earned, I think, at least for the time being, his opportunities in that lineup.
Yeah, I think with Putnam at 2, to answer your first question, I don't mind it. I do wonder if maybe you could swap him and Paulino, and maybe you have the more powerful bat behind Miles for the cleanup spot, and you have Paulino getting a bunch of fastballs in front of Miles and just raking fastballs like we've seen him do to this point. But at the same time, you can make that argument for Putnam getting more fastballs and being able to hammer those and use his power for production. I think that's still a spot that they're probably going to tinker with, I would guess. But I did like seeing Paulino at DH. I mean, we talked in the last episode. I think we both would like to see him be the full-time DH for at least a couple of weeks here to see what that looks like. Chef got the start in right over Brody. Did go over 4. I think Chef's slumping a bit right now. Kind of since he hit the couple home runs for the first 2 of his career, it just hasn't been the same production since before that point. But I think with him and Brody, you still feel like there's a lot of capability with both their bats, and you're trying to figure out the entire outfield still really with Stetzer, Sheffield, Brody, and Chase. I think the only one in the outfield that you probably feel 100% about is Dowd right now. And not to say you feel bad about the other ones, but you're trying to figure out, who are your top 3 that you want in there every day. Or do you want to go with a platoon of some sort, Chase hitting switch-handed? Do you want to get his left-handed bat in there against right-handed pitchers? Do you feel a certain way about Brody and Chef versus righties or lefties? Chef got the start against the right-handed pitchers, so maybe they feel that Chef is more comfortable against right-handers and Brody's more comfortable against left-handers. With Shmela, Nate continues to play well, and I think as long as Nate is playing well and Carnes is banged up, like we're going to continue to see Nate back there, because there's no reason to push Carnes through something if he is banged up, as Link has said, when Shmela is playing well and he's the hot hand right now, and you ride with that. And Nate is someone who I think you don't really worry about when he's back there and in the lineup. It's just, I haven't felt really concerned about Nate in the games that he's been behind the plate, and I haven't felt like it's come up too much. Like you don't really want to notice the catcher too much unless somebody obviously steals, and then you'd like to throw them out at least 25% or so. And Nate did throw out Javar Williams, which was really good to see at Wake Forest. The other one too, I think Will Bavaro is still at third base. It does seem like from what Link said in the presser today that like Gabe Frazier is available, and that he hasn't been playing just because Bavaro and Putnam have been playing well in the spots that they've been at in second and third since Frazier got hurt. And it's just like the Nate and Karn situation. As long as that person continues to play well, I think they're going to continue to start in that spot. And until that point, you hope those other guys stay ready. And if those guys do falter, then you can put them back in and those other guys are ready to go behind them.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma they have, right? They want to get a lot of these guys work, and no doubt, I think Frazier has a ton of upside, and you've seen that at times this season, but Bavaro's playing at a level that you could have never known how, Bavaro would have handled getting this extended opportunity. And when he runs with it, you can have your projections and your predictions and what you think might happen as a staff and a fan base and media, but then the kid plays well when the lights turn on, and it's a good problem to have. And Bavaro earned and deserves that opportunity. Same with Shmela, same with Putnam, who's now gotten his opportunity and has kind of run with it. And he's played a decent second base, decent enough. And then they'll figure out, right? Sheffield, Delamolier, they'll ride a hot hand. And then they still do love Chase. They love Chase Williams and what he can bring to the table. And I would look to see him get some opportunities soon enough. And is that at the expense of a Stutzer? I'm not sure how they'll do that. But Stutzer's kind of trending downward in terms of the last couple games at the plate and running the bases. But he still brings insane upside. And you've seen it. He's strong enough, even in a small ballpark, to flick a off-speed pitch over a wall, right, for a grand slam. Like that's impressive. And that's part of the package with Stutzer and what he can do and the way that, he can change a ball game himself. So a lot of different moving parts to this, and I think it'll continue to evolve, and that's why we preach context and patience. It's going to look a lot different on May 19th than where we're at right now on March 19th. That's every baseball team around the country. You settle in when it's winning time on the lineup you feel like can do that for you. And until you get to that point, you'll continue to figure things out with who has the hot hand in the regular season. So that being said, let's preview. You got one more thing, Brett? What you got? Sorry.
I just had one thought looking at the box score.
Sure.
I would love to know the last time that FSU had 2 games in a 4-game span where they threw 100 or less pitches as a team. Because they only threw 99 pitches in that game, and they threw 100 pitches in Wes's complete game shutout. So to the point I was making about it's good to take advantage of the 7-inning mercy rule, like you're not putting many pitches on your arms, and that's a really good thing. And just being efficient overall as the staff is very good to see.
What are you most looking forward to with this NC State matchup? I mean, obviously, the Pack under Elliott Avent are excellent, right? I mean, they're really good, and they are every year. And to me, Elliott Avent is so good for the game of college baseball for 2 reasons. One, the personality. You need it, I think, in this sport to grow the game. And I think, different people have different opinions on Elliott Avent, and they'll call it charades and antics and et cetera, et cetera. He has a unique personality, but I love it. As the guy who calls the games, and I can't wait to be on the broadcast this weekend, he met with me and Chris Chavez yesterday on Zoom, and he didn't have to. And he was as funny and candid as could be. And today in the press conference, Link Jarrett had a lot of good things to say about Elliott Avent and how much he cares as a human being about JT Jarrett and his family and some of those scenarios. And the relationship between Florida State and NC State, obviously with Chris Hart too, like you said, is really close. And there's a lot of similarities. And Elliott Avent's respect for Mike Martin Sr. and 11 and all the things that, Florida State, I think, established in the ACC that Elliott Avent wanted to try and mimic. And he wanted some things that he could take from this program to create sustainability in a big-time program that was relevant each and every year. And to me, that's what he's done, right? And that's the second thing I wanted to mention about NC State. Huge baseball program for those. They may not be a blue blood, and they may not be one of the best 5 or 10, and they don't get talked about enough, in my opinion, when you start throwing names out. But they're consistently really good. They make Omaha, and they're in the postseason, and they battle They have a lot of pros. Do people realize how many professional baseball players come from NC State? Like, does the average fan understand how much talent Elliott Avent has churned out? And I think he just got, over 1,300 wins in his career. So you're doing something right. And you're one of those names that I think is putting themselves in legend status, right? And he's got still years to go and in his career. I love when Florida State plays NC State. I love the opportunities I get to call NC State baseball, and they have a very, very passionate fan base. The Pac-9, I mean, they're going to be watching this weekend. They travel like you know what. They love their Pac. They care, and I think that's a program that doesn't get enough respect, in my opinion, Brett, nationally for what they've done and the consistency that they've had.
Yeah, and I think, well, obviously they're getting respect right now in the polls, but yeah, I think, been to Omaha a bunch of times, and the COVID year, kind of got a really rough deal there. I think JT was.
They got screwed, Bro.
That's I think it was terrible. And I want to say JT Jarrett was on that team.
He was,
because Link was talking about it today as well. And JT, Link's son, is the director of player and program development there. He was a player there for a long time as well. And then I think he went to Mississippi State as a GA before going back to NC State. So, a unique weekend for Link and his family. So I'm sure they'll enjoy that. But Link will have a good time with that. He had a good time with it today in the press conference. Pretty lengthy Elliott Avent impression. If anybody wants to go watch story time with Link and his press conference today. But yeah, I mean, this is a good team. Looking at them on paper, I do think when you look at the schedule, it's a little similar to Wake last weekend. FSU is going to be a pretty big step up in competition for them, and but I still think when you look at just the names that they have on their roster and the pure stuff across the pitching staff, like it's a very good team, and a team that you expect to be one of the top ACC contenders this year. I think the number one thing that excites me about this weekend is just the matchup of the 2 weekend rotations. NC State, could stake a claim to having the best rotation in the ACC by year's end. I think they'll have a battle with Florida State's being one that's up there in that battle. But the 1-2 of Dudon and how do you say it's Marone, I think is how you say his name. Yeah. It's just the 1-2 is, really, really good. And their Sunday starter is TBA right now, but whoever they go with between the two, either one of them is a very solid, very good option. And the other one, I would guess, will come out of the bullpen for them. So it's very effective and good pitching staff. That will be a tough test for FSU's pitching staff to match up to, and for the offense to go against.
I really think they would have won the national title in 2021 had they had the opportunity. I mean, Mississippi State fans should feel really thankful that NC State got sent home due to COVID, because that was, just hearing about some of the stories and the inconsistencies in the testing, and they didn't really, and I get it. It was a tough time, right, in our country's history, trying to figure that out, because no one really had a grip of what it was and how to go about it and how to administer it and how it with sports and how's it spread and all this different thing. So I'm not blaming anybody. I've never seen that happen where a team gets a majority of its roster sent home and then disqualified. And do you remember that year? I think they hit a late home run at Arkansas. It was like Jose Torres, their shortstop, hit this absolute nuke at bomb that just, I remember watching it at home and being like, no way that just happened. And that NC State team, if you go to bomb and you beat Arkansas, you did something right. That is a very tough place to play, and Arkansas plays insanely well there. But that was tough, and my heart goes out to Elliott and the Pac-9 family, because that's tough. And I talked to Link Jarrett today, and he was devastated for his son, obviously, and I think it hurt, right, the Jarrett family too, for them not to have that opportunity. But this version of NC State, Brett, the pitching staff, like you mentioned, doing my research for the broadcast this weekend, the two probable rotations that are the best in the ACC, I could probably make a case for Clemson as a rotation. I can make a case for Carolina as a rotation. And obviously, I think these two teams playing this weekend at Howser are firmly in the mix for the best rotation. 283 team ERA is loud, man. And they hit 338 team batting average. They've got some power. I think they're top 3 in the ACC in home runs right now. They feel pretty good, too, as a team at the moment. They've got some young stars. They added some portal pieces. They've got a couple of guys back that were stars last year. I mean, McHugh is a phenomenal baseball player. Nixon kind of has that X factor feel to him at times, too. And I think they're going to be ready to play Florida State. I think the Noles have to be ready. You know, you have the target on your back right now if you're FSU because of what you did against Wake Forest. The two things that I am interested on seeing with NC State before we break down some of these pitching matchups, they haven't really played a tough schedule yet. And so they are a very good baseball team. I am curious to see how they respond in Tallahassee at Howser in this atmosphere, playing the best team they've played to date on their year. They haven't really had a big test yet. They got Boston College for 3 in Raleigh, and they won 2 of those 3 games. And we'll see. You saw the big jump, right, in the bats what Florida State had to face when they went and faced Florida and Wake Forest. It kind of can be a shock initially, and you're trying to adjust. I didn't realize this. NC State has never won a series in Tallahassee in program history. That I had to continuously peer through my notes and go, there's no way this is right? There's no way this is a correct stat. And it was. And Florida State hasn't won a series at NC State since 2015. So the home team usually has good outcomes. 2 years ago, we had that weird split, remember, and the rain on Sunday and the field being unplayable. But these series are always really good, man. I'm curious to see what their lineup really is against a legit pitching staff. And then their pitching staff, you know, they're going to get some swing and miss against Florida State. Can they avoid the big inning against FSU playing at Howser? Because the Noles can put up crooked numbers, especially at their home park, in a hurry. So those are things that I'm looking forward to between these two teams. And then, of course, to me, you know, you get as good of a matchup on Friday night, Mendez and Marone, and then Beard versus Dudon. Like, to me, that's, if you're an ACC baseball fan, if you're a college baseball fan, like, that's the stuff you live for, is having some of the best pitchers in the conference go at it head to head.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the numbers for those arms that they have. I mean, Marone to this point in the year, 0.87 ERA in 4 starts, 20 2/3 innings, 26 Ks to 9 walks. You know, as a pitching staff completely, teams are hitting below 200 on the year against them, only 187. They also don't walk too many guys. You know, offensively, they also don't strike out much. But on the mound, Marone, left-hander. You know, Dudon is a right-hander that's going to rely on a slider heavily, pretty much. I think, you know, he's someone that came out of the bullpen for them the last couple of years, and has transitioned into a weekend starter and done it very well. So far early in the season, through 5 starts, he has a 2.01 ERA. He has worked a lot of innings in those 5 starts, 31 1/3 innings, so averaging over 6 innings to start. 40 strikeouts to 4 walks. I think that's, when you look at his numbers year to year, the biggest jump for him so far this year as a starter is his walk rate is way down, has a walk rate down in the 3% range, 40 strikeouts to 4 walks, so a 10-to-1 K to walk ratio. He's another guy that has an average under 200 against early this year with 188 against. And, you know, these guys have shown that they're hard to hit homers off of too. Marone only giving up 1, same with Dudon. You know, I think Dudon in the past has worked like into the hundreds and has sat in the upper 90s, but I believe as a starter is more in the mid 90s with like a sinking fastball. But I believe he's more in the 95, like 97 range as a starter, rather than being up in the top in the hundreds. But maybe you see him tick up a bit in an environment in a series like this. But it'll be really interesting to see how FSU's offense can handle those guys in the first 2 games.
Yeah, Marone's as polished as it gets, man. And Mendez has superstardom written all over him right now. I mean, people are starting to talk about Mendez in the back half of the first round and late in the first round into the comp picks, right? And so, you know, Wes has earned that because of the way he's pitched with the poise and the electricity of the fastball changeup combo with the breaking balls that he throws and kind of the moxie that he has on that Friday nights. And then Beard and Dudon, man, it's the second straight week, right? Beard's going up against High Octane on the other side. He went against Chris Lavonis and outdueled him, and Beard's going to go in there. And I'm not expecting 6 2/3 of shutout baseball and 14 strikeouts, but if he can get you into the 6th or 7th against this NC State team, you're doing something right? And I'll be curious to see how his changeup plays. The longer the season goes, right, the more scouting report will be there on, hey, this is how we need to adjust to his pitches and what we need to look for. And Elliott Avent, Chris Hart, and NC State do as good of a job as anyone of game planning offensively for opposing pitchers. And so Beard's going to have to be comfortable with some traffic at times, I think, this weekend, and being able to pitch out of it. Can his defense behind him go to work? And we'll find out how good that changeup is, right, this weekend. And we think it's pretty awesome, especially the way that he's able to manipulate it the way that he likes and throw the fastball off of it. And then I don't know, Sunday, Andrews, Consiglio, talking to Elliott Avent, he's rightfully not going to completely just tell us the rotation, and he should not. But Consiglio has been a dude for them in the pen for a number of years, and Cooper's been there, and he's a veteran, and it's got some serious life and stuff, and the slider's legit, and he pitches with a lot of energy. Was he on the mound 2 years ago in Tallahassee? I think he was in one of the games against Florida State and pitched at a really high level there. I want to say it was game 1 against Jamie Arnold when he came in relief, and I don't remember who started, but yeah, man, they've got a good quartet of arms in those 4, and then they have Anderson Nance, who does a nice job out of the pen. He's not off to the greatest start this season, but has a lot of pedigree, and he's got good life on his pitches, and that was the one area Coach Avent told us that they're still trying to figure out is the bullpen and who they trust. So very similar between Florida State and NC State in that regard. But yeah, man, big time ACC. This is what it's all about. Give me 3 keys for Florida State this weekend if they're going to come away with a series victory.
Yeah, well, NC State's a team that has liked to run early this year, 56 stolen bases and 63 attempts. And I've always felt like they have a very scrappy but also talented offense. Like, they always seem to just find any way to not strike out possible. I can remember from that series a couple years ago, it just felt like, they were just selling out to not strike out and just to put the ball in play. So overall, just you got to play good defense against them, because the ball probably is going to be in play at a higher rate than against most teams with your pitching staff and the stuff that you possess and the strikeout rates that you've shown to produce so far at this point. I think offensively, you just want to see them put together, good at bats and not chase out of the zone, because I think you're going to face arms that have stuff to really dominate you if you are chasing outside of the zone, and have a chance to be really efficient and get some quick outs if you're swinging at early count, off-speed pitches outside of the zone. So pitch selection, as always, will be big, I think. And then, you mentioned it. Their bullpen, I think, is something they're trying to figure out. Your bullpen is something you're trying to figure out. So getting depth and getting length out of your starters like you have to this point, I don't know if you'll get exactly the same as last weekend. It probably will be tough to do that, but getting length from your starters again and minimizing the outs that your bullpen has to get, and also maximizing the amount of outs that NC State's bullpen has to get, and trying to get their starters out of the game as fast as possible. I think that'll probably be a goal for both teams this weekend, is trying to get the pitch counts up for the starters and get them out of the game.
Yeah. Everett Johnson, a freshman for them, off to a terrific start right now, hitting .441. Not a ton of power, but he knows how to get on base, and a 13-5 walk to K ratio. I talked about Chris McHugh, 7 home runs on the year, one of the leaders in the ACC. Ty Head, 7 home runs on the year for them. And then Wyatt Pfeiffer was at JMU, so Florida State's seen him. He's hitting .379. Sherman Johnson, .386. Not a ton of power between them, but they did go and get Mikey Ryan. Mikey Ryan's a really good player for them, 5 home runs, and they went and got Dalton Bargo from Tennessee for some power potential there with 5 home runs on the year. And I remember Bargo from a couple years ago in that game against Florida State in Omaha. So probably didn't like his situation at Tennessee and got a clean start at NC State. And that's good power production there to be able to bring in from the SEC if you're the Wolfpack. Good baseball team, man. We talk about Nixon and McHugh. Those are the two veterans that have been there. And, not to mention Braden Frostman too, right? And yeah, they've got some dudes, man. They just haven't. This is their first real test of the season, so I'll be interested to see how they handle playing at Howser, the environment against their best opponent that they face, both on the mound and at the plate. And then for Florida State, this is life in the ACC. It's not going to get any easier. This is a gauntlet. And so if you want another weekend series victory that will be a notch on your belt for the resume and the committee later on this year, then you got to play clean baseball. And I think that's what I've been impressed with most, Brett, as we wrap up. The Noles have played pretty clean baseball for the most part in the field. It hasn't been perfect, but they're better defensively than I thought they would be with all the different moving parts that they've had to try and figure out a lineup.
Yeah, things have definitely, smoothed down, I think, for the defense and become a lot more consistent over the last couple or few weeks. I can't recount too many errors, and it feels like every time you check, the fielding percentage has gone up with every game that has passed. There just haven't been many errors, and the defense is part of throwing a no-hitter as well, having guys in the right spot and those guys making plays in those spots. And you're, like I said, you're going to need the defense to be good. I was just looking it up. NC State's averaging 4.5 strikeouts per game offensively. So, I mean, they just refuse decay. We'll see if they can keep that up against better arms. But, I mean, you have guys like Ty Head that it's 21 walks to 5 Ks. These are guys that are going to do everything they can to work long at bats, put the ball on the bat. Put the bat on the ball and get on base, and then try to create some havoc when they do. So pretty interesting. And I think a pretty versatile lineup that they have. They have a lot of guys with 5+ homers, but also a lot of guys with 5+ stolen bases, a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. So it will be important to put together another solid defensive weekend.
No doubt about it. All right, man. I think that's a pretty good. We finally did a podcast episode under an hour and 10 minutes. So
it's possible. Anything is possible.
I think Kevin Garnett. Cool. This weekend, 6 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, Nevitt in the house. I'm looking forward to seeing all your different angles and videos. And these are the series that your content really plays up, So it's going to be a lot of fun. On the call with Chris Chavez all weekend long. And you can find us on ACC Network Extra and the ESPN app. And shout out to my good friend Andrew Sanders, who's a radio guy for NC State baseball and does a lot of their ACC Network Extra games up there in Raleigh. I think he's not making the trip. He told me this one because he's with their women's basketball program, who powerhouse. So they're in the tournament and those coincide. So we'll miss him this weekend. He sent me a bunch of notes though from his own prep, and he's like, should get you pretty well rounded on the pack. So I'll be ready to go. Looking forward to seeing you this weekend, my friend. Any last thought before we say goodbye?
No, looking forward to getting to Howser this weekend. Should be fun.
All right. Well, episode 173 is a wrap. He's Brett Nevitt. I'm Ariya Masudi.